In the still of the night, in a peaceful suburb of Marion, Ohio, the laughter of children had long faded, and the neighborhood lay in deep, comforting sleep. But behind the faded yellow siding of one modest house, something unthinkable was taking place. 25-year-old Nicole Hartley had grown up on these very streets, her childhood a swirling storm of neglect, abuse, and pain. Her father vanished before she was born, and her mother, a chronic addict, was in and out of treatment until an overdose claimed her when Nicole was just 13. With no stable relatives, Nicole was bounced through foster homes, carrying a simmering anger no one could tame. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder in her teens, she found herself medicated, suspended from school for fights, and eventually arrested for petty theft at 16. After a short stint in juvenile detention, she drifted away, disappearing into a haze of cheap apartments, barroom relationships, and drug binges. Years later, Nicole returned to Marion with nowhere else to go. It was supposed to be a fresh start, but ghosts have a way of following you home. That's where she reconnected with Dylan Price, her old classmate and one-time boyfriend. Dylan had grown into a kind-hearted, dependable man. He worked construction with his father, volunteered with youth sports, and seemed to have put the rough high school years behind him. When Dylan saw Nicole again, he was hesitant at first. But he'd always been drawn to helping broken things. He told his friends Nicole was just down on her luck, and maybe he could help her get back on her feet. They began seeing each other. Hanging out turned to hooking up. Hooking up turned into a messy, toxic entanglement. Dylan's family worried about him, but he refused to listen. No one could have predicted how far Nicole would fall, or how far she'd drag Dylan down with her. It was late March, just past midnight, when Dylan's mother, Carol, heard a car door slam outside. Moments later, she saw Nicole's shadow slipping down into the basement where Dylan stayed while saving for his own place. Carol thought nothing of it. Nicole had been there before. Hours passed. Carol woke around 3 a.m. to let the dog out, and she noticed a strange metallic smell coming from the basement stairs. She tried to ignore it but couldn't. When she called Dylan's name, there was no answer. She walked down the steps, the dim bulb swaying above her. At the foot of the stairs, she saw a plastic tote. A stained towel was thrown over the top. Her gut turned cold. She reached down, lifted the towel, and screamed so loud the neighbor's dog began barking. Inside the tote was what remained of her son's torso, hacked apart so violently that bone had splintered. Carol's knees buckled. She fled up the stairs, screaming for her husband to call 911. When police arrived, they could barely process the horror before them. Blood was splattered on the walls, soaking the mattress. Ziploc bags containing body parts were scattered among Dylan's gym clothes. A small duffel bag zipped halfway revealed something even worse: Dylan's severed head. Officers stepped back, their radios crackling for more units, for crime scene teams, for anyone. Nicole was gone. It didn't take long to track her down. Her beat-up gray Honda Civic was abandoned behind an old grocery store, streaks of blood on the passenger seat. Inside the store's alley dumpster, they found a pair of jeans, soaked with blood, and a kitchen knife. An hour later, Nicole was discovered wandering aimlessly on foot, barefoot, shirtless, her hands stained to the elbows with blood. She barely reacted when officers approached. "Is he dead?" she asked, and then she laughed, the sound so cold it made one deputy turn away to catch his breath. In the interrogation room, Nicole's words were like poison. She told detectives she and Dylan had been using meth earlier that night. Their sex games, she claimed, involved choking, but this time she couldn't stop. Nicole described how Dylan's eyes went wide, how he struggled, and how that only made her tighten the cord around his neck harder. When he stopped moving, she panicked, she said, but her panic turned to something darker. She went to the kitchen upstairs, grabbed knives, and returned to the basement. Nicole described how she cut him apart, piece by piece, matter-of-factly. She said she planned to take him with her, but got too tired to finish the job. She left the head because it was too heavy to carry. Detectives felt physically sick hearing her talk about it. One asked if she felt remorse. Nicole only shrugged. Nicole Hartley was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and sexual assault of a corpse. Prosecutors argued she was fully aware of what she was doing. Nicole's public defender tried to plead not guilty by reason of mental disease, arguing that Nicole was in a full-blown psychotic break. But experts for the state disagreed, saying Nicole was calm, coherent, and took deliberate steps to hide evidence. As the trial began, the jury watched Nicole's confession on tape, her slight smirk, her casual mention of how she kind of liked it. Some jurors wept. Dylan's father, a strong, proud man who had taught his son the trades, stood in court, voice cracking as he described identifying Dylan's remains. Dylan's sister, too, sobbed as she told the court that her brother had always tried to see the good in people, even people who never deserved it. It took the jury just 3 hours to convict Nicole on all charges. At sentencing, the judge did not mince words. He called Nicole's acts a carnival of cruelty and said she posed a threat to any community that might ever accept her again. Nicole was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even as the sentence was read, she laughed under her breath, a chilling sound that still echoes in the memories of everyone in that courtroom. Dylan's family tried to piece their lives back together. His mother, Carol, still sleeps with the basement door bolted shut. She sometimes thinks she hears Dylan's voice calling from down there, and then wakes up crying, clutching his childhood baseball glove to her chest. Nicole's own family hardly showed at the trial. Her aunt, who had taken her in briefly as a teenager, told a reporter, "That girl was broken from the start. But what she did was pure evil." When Nicole Hartley was loaded into the back of a police cruiser, the officers noticed something that seemed off. Despite the blood, despite the horror, Nicole had a small smile on her lips, like she'd just been on a joyride instead of committing one of the worst murders in Marion's history. Detectives wanted to believe Nicole acted alone, but the more they looked into her final days before Dylan's murder, the more they saw cracks in the story. A search of Nicole's phone turned up dozens of frantic, disjointed messages in the weeks leading up to the murder. Some seemed to be directed to a man named Reese, a name no one in her family or Dylan's circle recognized. "It's going to be all or nothing," one text read, timestamped just days before Dylan was killed. "I can't hold it back anymore." Detectives wondered, who was Reese? Was he a friend? A dealer? Or something worse? Nicole refused to answer when they asked. She only repeated over and over, "I'm the monster, not him." Digging deeper, police found that Nicole had been trying to get off meth in early February. She had reached out to a rehab counselor, even scheduled an intake appointment. But 2 days before that appointment, she canceled. What? A friend told investigators that Nicole had been pulled right back in by someone who wanted her to relapse. They called it the dark game, the friend whispered to detectives. A dangerous mix of meth, pills, and violent sex. Was Reese the ringleader? Nicole had a long history of mental illness, but evidence suggested someone might have encouraged her worst impulses, handed her the chain she used to strangle Dylan, and watched as she crossed the point of no return. As the investigation widened, Dylan's family struggled to pick up the pieces. His mother, Carol, found herself replaying that moment over and over, the smell, the blood, the plastic tote. She couldn't bear to enter the basement, so her brother had come over and nailed the door shut. But the nightmares didn't stop. Every night she heard Dylan's voice. "Mom, help me," he'd say somewhere in the darkness. Carol blamed herself. If I'd just gone down sooner, she thought. If I'd just made her leave. Meanwhile, Nicole's father, released from prison only weeks after the murder, wrote a letter to the court from a halfway house. In it, he claimed his daughter was never shown love, never given a fair chance. But even he admitted, what she did is beyond forgiveness. At Nicole's sentencing hearing, the courtroom was packed. The jury's foreman told reporters they had never seen anything so cold-blooded. One juror, a mother of two, had to excuse herself after seeing the crime scene photos. And Nicole? She sat motionless in her orange jumpsuit, occasionally smirking, occasionally rolling her eyes. Then came the witness who changed everything. A man no one recognized stepped up to testify. A local truck driver named Chris claimed he'd seen Nicole, just days before the murder, in a diner parking lot, with a tall man covered in tattoos, matching the description of Reese. He testified he heard Nicole arguing with him, saying, "I'll do it, but you owe me." What was she talking about? Prosecutors tried to follow that lead, but Reese, if he was real, had vanished. As officers packed up evidence after the trial, they found one final note Nicole had written on a torn scrap of envelope, hidden in the folds of her jail-issue blanket. "I wasn't alone." That single sentence chilled investigators. Had she been a puppet? Or had she simply been trying to sow chaos on her way to prison? The possibility that someone else was out there, someone even more dangerous, left the whole town on edge. Today, Marion tries to move forward. Neighbors still leave flowers on Dylan's grave. His father, David, built a bench in Dylan's memory at the local baseball diamond, where Dylan once coached Little League. But every time Carol drives past that yellow house, she feels a cold wind against her neck. She wonders if Reese is watching, if he's waiting. After Nicole Hartley was sentenced to life without parole, most people in Marion thought the nightmare had ended. But investigators couldn't ignore the cryptic text. "It's your turn now." That single message kept them awake at night. Who was Reese? And was he still out there? Detectives traced every lead, combed through Nicole's social media, and subpoenaed cell tower data. They uncovered phone calls to a prepaid burner registered to a false name, pinging around central Ohio. Then a break. A local drug user, trying to cut a deal on her own charges, told police she'd met a tall, heavily tattooed man calling himself Reese who was selling meth at a known trap house on the edge of town. She described him as cold, quiet, and controlling, exactly how Nicole's text messages made him sound. When officers raided the trap house, Reese was gone, but what they found inside was bone-chilling. A stained mattress, handcuffs bolted to a pipe, and a bag of photographs. In those photos, Nicole was shown in disturbing positions, bruised, with eyes glazed from drugs. This was no casual acquaintance. This was someone who had been shaping Nicole's dark spiral for weeks, maybe longer. Detectives visited Nicole one last time at the women's prison, hoping for answers. When they asked if Reese had helped plan Dylan's murder, she just laughed, eyes empty. "He didn't help," she said. "He told me what I already wanted to do." Nicole claimed Reese had dared her to prove herself, to show she was capable of going all the way. She described how he'd watched her choke Dylan in a video call, cheering her on as she squeezed harder, telling her not to stop. And after, he told her to carve up Dylan's body. Detectives were stunned. Was this delusion or real? Nicole was adamant. "Check the call log," she told them. He was there. Sure enough, records confirmed a video chat to Reese's burner at the exact hour Dylan died. In a last-ditch effort, investigators appealed to the public. Tips flooded in. People swore they'd seen Reese in Columbus, in Dayton, and even as far as Kentucky. But no one could pin him down. Then, 2 weeks after Nicole's final interview, a call came from a small diner outside Cleveland. A waitress reported a tall, tattooed man, quiet, with a stare that made her blood run cold. She heard him talking to someone on a burner phone, telling them, "It's already started." By the time police arrived, he had vanished. Back in Marion, Dylan's family struggled to rebuild their lives. Carol had sold the house. She couldn't live with the memories of that basement any longer. She moved in with her sister, trying to find peace, but the smallest sounds, a creaking floorboard, a door closing, still made her jump. At Dylan's graveside, his father David would sometimes stand alone, telling his son he was sorry, that he'd failed to protect him. His sister Rachel, newly married, still leaves a single sunflower by Dylan's headstone every Sunday. A wound like that never fully heals. The DA filed a sealed indictment naming John Doe, also known as Reese, as a person of interest in conspiracy to commit murder. But without a real name, Reese became a ghost. And Nicole? She began to fade from the headlines. Prison guards reported she mostly kept to herself, rarely speaking, sometimes humming to herself at night. But one disturbing detail stayed the same. She still smiled in her sleep. In August, months after Nicole's conviction, an envelope arrived at the police station. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Reese standing in front of a mirror, shirtless, with new tattoos covering his chest. Drawn crudely across his ribs were 2 words: "Your turn." Pinned to the back of the photo was a grainy Polaroid. It showed another woman, tied up, terrified, eyes wide. Authorities fear Reese has found his next victim, and no one knows who she is or where she might be. Detectives are still working the case, chasing shadows, trying to piece together clues before another basement somewhere turns into a butcher shop. The case that began in a quiet Ohio neighborhood now haunts police across the Midwest. Because somewhere, a predator is still free, fueled by chaos, hunting for the next dark game.